Have a motion and a second on P1 and Z6 for continuance. Please vote. Motion carries. Item Z13.
Z13 is zoning case Z 2015-300S ERZD from MPCD GC1 MLOD AHOD ERZD to MPCD-S with a specific use authorization for motor vehicle sales, located in the 5000 block of Loop 1604 West. Staff and Zoning Commission recommend approval with an impervious cover limitation of 65%. 2 notices were mailed, 0 returned in favor, and 0 in opposition.
Councilman Nierenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. This item was pulled for individual consideration due to the location over the site of the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone, so I will motion for approval.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval on Z13. Please vote. Motion carries. Item 29.
Item 29 is an ordinance amending Chapter 35 Unified Development Code of the City of San Antonio, Texas by correcting clerical and formatting items, making major amendments, making minor amendments, clarifying items, and amending definitions pursuant to Section 35-111 of the Unified Development Code and providing for publication.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. There we go. Okay, so this is the UDC update process that we do every 5 years. As you can see, the code does prescribe this process within it. The code does allow for amendments to be submitted by staff, by commission members, by council members. It also allows for private citizens to submit amendments to the code. However, those amendments by the private citizens are limited to minor amendments and clarifications. As you can see from the slide, May 1st was our deadline to submit amendments. We received 260 amendments by 30 different individuals or agencies. Some were internal, some were external agencies. On this slide, you can see the internal agencies that submitted amendments: City Attorney's Office, Development Services, SAWS, and TCI. On this next slide, you can see we received 76 amendments from private citizens, and they're listed here. Private citizens, also some businesses such as HEB, the Green Industry Alliance, King William Association, Real Estate Council as well submitted some amendments. So on this next slide, I just kind of wanted to walk you through the UDC process so you can understand how we got here. As I mentioned, it started May 1st. Those were deadlines to submit amendments to the UDC. And these were, what I'm doing is I'm looking at just internal amendments. These are amendments submitted by staff and commissions. So we had a stakeholder vetting process. We looked at these amendments, made sure there weren't duplicates, made sure they didn't conflict with other amendments. So a good thorough process to review the amendments and organize them was done by staff. Internal amendments, those, like I said, they can be major, they can be minor. So those went straight to the TAC for technical review. And then we have the external amendments, which followed the same process, initially same deadline, same vetting process. However, because they're limited to minor and clarifications, we had to make a determination whether the amendments submitted were minor or if they fell outside of that category. So those amendments went to the Planning Commission Technical Advisory Committee as well as the Planning Commission. And a ruling was made. Minor amendments allowed to proceed. Major amendments at that point, Planning Commission basically killed those amendments. However, they did have the option to sponsor some amendments. So those amendments that were minor or sponsored by the Planning Commission because they were major proceeded to the TAC for a technical review. So then the amendments are together at this point. So TAC meets. There's a lot of stakeholder meetings, a lot of back and forth on these, vetting these amendments, a lot of clarification, making sure the wording is just right. Sometimes we break off into small groups. Sometimes there's subcommittees of the TAC, just trying to work out these amendments and get them just right for your consideration. Following the TAC process, we go to the boards and commission, and they reviewed these and made a recommendation on them. And then we went to the Neighborhoods and Livability Committee, chaired by Councilman Trevino, where they received a vetting process and a recommendation by that committee. We did have a B session just a couple of weeks ago, And we are here today. Following today, the amendments that do get approved will go into effect in January. So that's the process that we went through, long process to get here. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about those amendments that were submitted by the external folks. As you can see, there were 76 of them that were submitted, as I said earlier. 33 of those, after going through the Planning Commission process, were determined to meet the criteria in the UDC as minor amendments, or the Planning Commission chose to sponsor those amendments. So 33 amendments proceeded through the process. 43 of those amendments did not. The end of the road was reached by those amendments there. And I wanted to call your attention to one particular amendment that was submitted by Robert Berry and Dr. Timothy Barker. This had to do with an ambulatory surgical center. What they were asking us to do is they looked at our interpretation of the UDC, which allows an ambulatory center to go in the office districts, the neighborhood commercial districts, C1, C2, C3 in the downtown district. They were asking us to remove allowing these uses by right in the neighborhood commercial and C1 district. So when that one went to the Planning Commission for the vetting process, the Planning Commission said this is a major amendment. So at that point, that amendment died. But the Planning Commission at this point said, you know what, we want to sponsor our own amendment. We understand ambulatory surgical centers are not defined in the code, so we think we need to define them. But the Planning Commission was very clear. They wanted to continue to allow those in the neighborhood commercial and the C1 districts. So this kind of had the opposite effect of what was submitted by Mr. Berry and Mr. Barker. So moving on, I just once again want to share with you, before we got here, there was a ton of hours spent on these amendments, a lot of meetings by stakeholders, the tax, the boards and commissions, just DSD time alone, 400 hours was spent. So that's not talking about TCI and the city attorney's office, all the staff time, all the citizens that looked at this. So what you have before you are a little bit over 200 amendments for you to consider today. Here's some amendments, and I'm not going to go through these in any detail because we talked about them during the B session. We spent a lot of time on these amendments having to do with stormwater design. We're going to have an appendix in the back of the book that has those standards in it, so it's going to be easy for our customers to use. The Food Policy Council submitted an amendment where basically food that you grow in your own garden at home, you'll be able to sell it. So that's a change because typically you can't do retail from your home. We spent a lot of time talking about secondary access, and we worked it out through the TAC and the Planning Commission. And we're also offering some relief for some small businesses in the way of sidewalks. If they're doing less than $50,000 renovation, the sidewalk provision will not kick in. So after all of that, surprisingly, staff, the TAC, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of all the amendments, with the exception of these three. These three, we had a few dissensions, so I'll just kind of go through these individually. The first one has to do with historic violations. What this amendment would do would, if we go through, we issue a violation, the city has to go and correct the violation, and we charge the property owner for cleaning it up. If they don't pay, this allows us to put a lien on the property. We do this with all of our code enforcement violations, so this would add that to the group. This one got a recommendation for approval by Planning and TAC. However, the Zoning Commission only had 6 members there, so they failed to get all 6 votes, so no recommendation was made. And then we have the bike facilities. This would require bike lanes on all arterials and collector streets. This one received a denial recommendation from the TAC and from the Planning Commission. However, Zoning Commission and staff is recommending approval of this. And then finally, the ambulatory surgical center amendment that we talked about a little bit earlier. This one received an approval from the TAC and the Planning Commission. Zoning Commission, once again, only 6 members were there. They failed to get all 6 votes, so no recommendation came out of the Zoning Commission. And staff is recommending approval of the amendment that came out of the TAC process. So with that, Mayor, we're available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. We have several citizens who've asked to speak on this item. I'll call them this time. We'll start with Jack M. Finger. Okay, thank you. Tina Luther. As Ms. Luther comes forward, I would ask if everyone would refrain from applause, cheering, hissing, so that we can hear everything that's stated and each person can hear their name. Ms. Luther will be followed by Lori Rojas.
Hello, I'm Tina Luther, and I live and work in the medical center. I serve on the Dream Hill Estates Neighborhood Association Board, and I thank you for your time today and the time many of my neighbors have spoken to you and your staff this past week. As you know, the Planned Parenthood's Ambulatory Surgical Center, located at 2140 Babcock, is in the Dream Hill Estates neighborhood proper, located within 50 feet of homes and near facilities that serve children. There is no buffer zone between the residential homes and this ambulatory surgical center. Unfortunately, neighbors found out about the new clinic coming to our neighborhood the same day as San Antonio Express News article that was published October the 12th last year. We were never informed in advance. According to the article, approximately 30,000 new visitors to the clinic would be brought to our neighborhood, which is a considerable amount of foot traffic. This time last year, I contacted each of your offices with the belief that this new location of Planned Parenthood would bring an increase of crime to our neighborhood, along with a host of other issues. And it did. I used the city's police database to look for calls for service in Dream Hill Estates. Last year, between May 1st and November 30th, 2014, there were 15 calls for police service. During the same months this year, there were 52 police calls. Calls for service tripled, and if you'd like, you can take a look comparing October 2014 and then October 2015, as you can see a significant jump. Two child-oriented businesses are within close proximity, Study Hall Daycare Center and Clarity Child Guidance Center. Study Hall Daycare Center has 90 small children who go for educational and personal care. They walk through the neighborhood as well as other children who naturally live in our neighborhood. The daycare owner has said that he has had to explain to children the graphic signs of bloody fetuses that are often displayed by protesters. We also have experienced traffic and noise problems, damage to infrastructure due to this business. We never wanted this business in our neighborhood, and we would never wish this upon any of your neighborhoods that are in your districts. Please take a moment to ask yourself, would you want this in your neighborhood? Because that is exactly what the city staff proposed amendment would do. We are experiencing a plethora of problems that we are not accountable for, and homeowners have not been able to sell their homes for what they are worth. We are not in favor of this proposed amendment by the city staff that was also not recommended by the Zoning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Luther. Lori Rojas, followed by Alicia Rojas.
Thank you for meeting with us today. We greatly appreciate your time. As a member of the board of the Neighborhood Association, I did take note of what was spoken earlier, and the applicant never met with our neighborhood, nor did they, in terms of the Planned Parenthood, nor did they meet with the Neighborhood Association. We have experienced significant infrastructure problems. Our water main continues to break, and it's broken twice in the last 6 to 7 months. Neighbors were never informed. The lights that are on the building point directly at residences. There's no wood fence. The trash is placed right next to the residences. There's no buffer. There's nothing that's even 10 feet. What we proposed is we put forth our subject matter experts, Dr. Timothy Barker and Mr. Robert Berry. Dr. Timothy Barker has over 20 years as a seasoned physician, and Mr. Robert Berry has between 40 and 50 years working with the city as an engineer. Each time we've spent throughout the year, we have put considerable time and considerable effort, like Mr. Sanchez said, that we're trying to show the city how difficult this has been on a residential area. We know that words really do matter, and so applying this definition really could have a detrimental effect to the rest of the city. So it is important that you reject the definition that city staff has proposed, and that you consider a definition that specifically covers ambulatory surgical centers and where they can be located. In our case, the medical center has a commercial side that's C2, C3, and they have a residential side, which is neighborhood commercial and residential. We should not allow a regional headquarters of an international business to be placed on the residential side. Those types of businesses has already been designated by the city zoning code to go in commercial areas. At this point, we would urge you to strongly consider what would be specifically identified as an ambulatory surgical center amendment, specifically for placing them in C2, C3 zoning. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rojas. Alicia Rojas, followed by Janice Flowers.
Good afternoon. I'm very aware of my English, but also I'm Christian, and I'm very aware that we are responsible for the things we do and the things that we don't. So I came to tell you that I worked very hard for more than, until I was 75, to pay my house in Dream Hills. And because my neighborhood, as my principal said, it is a sanctuary for people and for animals. Well, it was not anymore. Even the children from study hall came to play in the triangle right there in front of my house, and they don't come anymore because the traffic. Suddenly this clinic appears with all the traffic and the movement, and Dream Hills is not dream. And I wish that you listen to us and give us back our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Janice Flowers, followed by Phil Sevilla.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. As a San Antonio homeowner, I'm standing before you on behalf of my compassion for the Dream Hill Estates residents to inform you that we stand with them. As homeowners, we're highly opposed to the city's proposal to the UDC, which would redefine our present zoning regulations and definitions, allowing for ambulatory surgical facilities to be located in residential neighborhoods. Why should any homeowner be subjected on a daily basis to the fact that death is taking place in their neighborhood every time they step foot outside of their residence? A yes vote on this issue, allowing for ambulatory surgical facilities to be accommodated into C1 zoning areas, does just that. Any business or facility which has cold storage facilities on its premises, which stores frozen human body parts or their remains, should not be allowed in residential areas because it makes surrounding properties become stigmatized properties. A stigmatized property is one that gives a negative psychological effect because of real or imagined events taking place on or near the property. According to realestateDamages.com, the famous stigmatized property, which had an 83% vacancy rate and was ultimately demolished, was the apartment complex which serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer housed his dismembered victims' body parts in his cold storage unit, which was his refrigerator. Stigmatized properties generally sell for 20% less than market value, and homeowners and realtors must disclose that information as material fact when selling stigmatized properties. I'm so disappointed and concerned also that somehow our city officials bypass proper zoning procedures to allow the 2140 Babcock Planned Parenthood facility to exist within 50 feet of the Dream Hill Estates subdivision, especially in light of zoning notifications and procedures not being properly implemented. All organizations should follow proper zoning rules and not be given special privileges where zoning is concerned. We're asking that you would not, please, redefine our zoning laws to the detriment of our San Antonio homeowners. Council members, we're asking that you would put yourself in the homeowner's position, the Dream Hill Estates homeowner's position, and vote no, and let your compassion be seen.
Thank you, Ms. Flowers. Phil Sevilla, followed by Carlos Zaldivar.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council, men and women. I'm Phil Sevilla, president of a pro-life, pro-family, pro-marriage nonprofit organization in San Antonio. Medical surgical facilities and hospitals are not permitted uses within a C1 zoning district. This was the professional judgment of senior planner Trenton Robertson last December. Let's be honest, his public acknowledgement of the mishandling of the Planned Parenthood application cost him his job. Public trust has been violated again and again by senior employees of the city with regards to the zoning and permitting of the Planned Parenthood Abortion Center. Common sense would dictate that the government's primary role and reason for existence is to protect the public welfare and advance the common good. I'm sure we all agree with that. Granting a C1 classification to a surgical center is indefensible. Hospitals and medical facilities that perform operations require stricter scrutiny and oversight by the city and state necessary to protect the interests of the public. The mayor and city council represent the people of this city. It appears this past year, from the behavior and decisions of the city departments and their employees involved with the licensing of the very large Planned Parenthood abortion facility at 2140 Babcock, that the city and Planned Parenthood, it appears to us, have colluded, lied, and deceived the public and violated the public trust in the worst possible way. Please do not make a mockery of your honorable roles as mayor and city councilman. We will remember what you do here today, and we will work very hard in 2016 to elect city leaders who will heed the will of the people and serve with honor and integrity. The council should not amend the city's UDC to provide cover for the unprincipled, deceptive, dishonest activities of the Development Services Department, City Manager, and Planned Parenthood. Thank you.
Thank you. Carlos Zaldivar, followed by Matthew Martin.
Dear Madam Mayor and City Council members, how are you? The reason I'm here is because, as you know, I know some of you, and I believe that I know your heart, and you would agree that our greatest asset in this city is the people of the city of San Antonio. And if you are for the people of San Antonio, you must be for the babies that are in the womb of their mothers just as well. And I want you to think about this, more on a personal level, because this is what we are in the city. We're not a machine. This is not about politics. This is not about favoritisms. This is truly about the reality of the life of the human being with a human heartbeat, a human soul, a human life. So these are real babies that are being aborted in these facilities. And it is incomprehensible that anyone would want children that are yet not born be killed. Even the mothers, after an abortion, they admit that's something they wouldn't want to do. There is no such a thing as a mother of a baby that wants to kill her baby. It doesn't exist. These are crisis pregnancies, tough situations. They feel vulnerable. They don't find an asylum in the hearts of the society of the city of San Antonio. The city council members, the mayor are great people. They have great hearts, and I know, like I say, I know some of you well, and I don't believe that you would vote for supporting such things. I just don't believe that. And so I beg you to really dig deep in your hearts and understand that these are real lives. And we're talking about scientific proof, not somebody's idea of life. It's a real human life, a real human person. So this is what really matters, and I beg of you to just think about this and say no to this new notion of having these abortion clinics in San Antonio, period. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Aldivar. Matthew Martin, followed by Paula Moore.
Thank you, City Council. Thank you, Mayor. I ask you to turn your attention to why you all are concerned for this rezoning ordinance. Does it allow easier access for you to receive medical care that you desire personally? Or would you even use this facility to send your son or your daughter to, or a facility such as this? And if not, are you considering the unfortunate women maybe lacking women's health care services? And if you are, I got to ask yourself, are there not many facilities which provide women's care, many other facilities which provide women's care, to include well women visits that do not murder babies? And if you consider this, then why change this particular law specific to Planned Parenthood? Especially since the Zoning Commission gave no recommendation or even consideration to the zoning ordinance. Now, let me respectfully ask that you guys consider Mark 8:36, which says, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? Honestly, I'm not concerned of your potential gain or your political stance, as God put you in your position, and He will remove you on His time. But where you stand with the Creator of life should be your concern. Most of you here claim to be Christians, so before you vote, I again respectfully ask you to meditate on two scriptures specifically. First one is James 4:17. It says, if anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, to him it is sin. And second, Deuteronomy 30:19-20, and I'm going to leave you with this. This day I call the heavens and the earth as witness against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Paula Moore, followed by Alex Daymill.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Paula Moore. I'm pro-life coordinator for Concerned Women for America, which is the largest Christian women's group in the United States. I'm here to represent them in the state of Texas. A couple of things that I want to bring out. One is, I'm asking you, please do not make it possible for Planned Parenthood to ruin yet another neighborhood. You have heard these testimonies from these people. You have seen what is happening. Are you going to let this go on? Are you going to let these neighborhoods fall down, crumble? Are you going to let all this happen? It will, if this amendment passes. The second thing that I have to offer up today is a brief bit of scripture from Psalms. As I was doing my morning prayers, this just kind of, I was reading it and I thought that this was applicable for today. He who planted the ear, does he not hear? He who formed the eye, does he not see? He who disciplined the nations, he who teaches knowledge to humankind, does he not chastise? Ultimately, all of us will be held accountable for our acts and our deeds. We cannot escape that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Alex Daymill, followed by Cynthia Cerna.
Thank you for the time that you're giving us, Mayor and City Council. I don't live in this neighborhood, but what we're really talking about here is changing the verbiage instead of an abortion clinic to a surgical center or ambulatory surgical center. Let's not parse words. It is what it is. And the neighborhood that this facility is located in is a family neighborhood, and it's affecting us as a city. It's something that concerns all of us because we're talking about life. God gave us life, gave everyone here life. So what we're really talking about is, are we going to let a facility stand in a neighborhood that doesn't support life? We should be united in this. Everyone here should be united in this. We're celebrating a season of our Savior's Son giving us life. And I think we should all think very, very hard about that. Planned Parenthood could take this facility and put it anywhere they want to. They have the funds and the means to do it. This is not uniting San Antonio. And it's not good for us as a community, for our community soul. And I think that's what we really, really should be thinking about here, is what is best for San Antonio. And changing the name to a surgical care center or whatever you want to call it is not going to make it anything different than what it is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Cynthia Cerna, followed by Bishop John Yanta.
Hello, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members, for hearing us out. First, I have to apologize because when I came the other Wednesday night, I said this was citizens to be ignored, and I'm glad to see that it can't be ignored today with this vote happening. But I want to just remind people that some of the folks here have been talking to you on this issue for over a year. Over a year, we've been addressing the improper zoning of 2140 Babcock. Evidently, you, the mayor, had asked that the Dream Hill Estates neighborhood would be notified of information that has to do with the zoning of this 2140 Babcock, and they weren't. They're here talking to you today, a year later, over a year later. And so it's time to stop ignoring this issue. Changing the definition of ambulatory surgical center to C1 and all the other explanation to it just means that it could be moved anywhere near any neighborhood in San Antonio. We don't need that. I live right off of Babcock Road in Councilman Medina's district, and I used to live down the street, or what used to be down the street from me was the other Planned Parenthood at 104 Babcock. And we protested there, because we stand for life. But now we're protesting a lot more because it's illegally zoned, the Planned Parenthood at 2140 Babcock. And we're going to continue to protest this because the laws are not being followed. They're being, you're looking aside because Planned Parenthood has bought y'all out or just is, going to receive favoritism all the way around. But it's not going to stop. We're not going to be ignored anymore. Okay? I'm post-abortive. I can say that if I had known of crisis pregnancy centers or other help, I wouldn't have made that kind of a choice for myself. And so I would hope that San Antonio would be looking more like a resource center city that's built up with resources and help for women and for their children, rather than boosting a mega center to become the capital of, abortions here in San Antonio. Planned Parenthood is just an unnecessary evil. They have lied. They have done evil things like selling body parts and whatnot. They've done so many bad things, and they shouldn't be associated with what you all are doing here today. And so if you continue this road of giving them favoritism and changing laws to accommodate them, then it's going to be reflected in the way that we vote next elections. Thank you very much. And please vote against this amendment.
Thank you. Bishop John Yanta. Thank you.
Madam Mayor and distinguished members of the City Council, and in particular my councilman, Chris Medina. My name is Bishop retired John Yanta. I have been a resident of San Antonio at different times for over 62 years. I am returning, in one sense, from 11 years serving as the Bishop of Amarillo in the Texas Panhandle, and I could have chosen many places in Texas where I could have retired. But you know, I decided to retire in San Antonio because of the values. Of the values, not only Christian values, but the values of all people who believe in the Golden Rule. I once read that every religion has the Golden Rule in one way or the other. Treat others like you would like to be treated. Do unto others as you would like to be treated and done to. I thank my parents for giving me life. My time in San Antonio, where I was very familiar with the workings of the City Council, was 50 years ago. I was the organizer, by God's grace, of the Sanya program, a very successful, large anti-poverty program that gave me inspiration to work with the young people of the West Side and the East Side and South Side. 80% were of Mexican-American ethnicity, and there about 19% were our brothers and sisters, black people, and then there was about 1% of the rest of us, as we say. There was a little statement in that legislation that a Texan, LBJ, who lived just up the road, basically it was very simple that we want to offer an opportunity to every American citizen to develop their full potential. I think that's what you're trying to do. Every citizen, resident of San Antonio, you want to give them the opportunity of developing their full potential. You have allowed Planned Parenthood to bypass the law. I said last Wednesday night when I was here 8 days ago that smells. And if you pass what I think some of you want to pass, or you intimidated, that's what you wanted, it's going to stink up this town and take away the image that brought me back to San Antonio. This is a city where God reigns. And we know that when I came back, we are not only making fun of Jesus and the apostles, but you, with your facility, have given the people to go to the San Pedro Playhouse. Is that San Antonio values? Do you think that's what the missions stand for? The first mission was the Alamo. You have a tremendous stewardship to fulfill, and we want you to be successful. And, you know, what is the legacy you're going to leave behind? Is it going to be similar to Dred Scott? Or we've had several people before me quote the scriptures. Open up your Bible to Matthew 25, and there you will see God himself judging the nations. And all the human race will be before him, and he's going to divide them like a shepherd into sheep and goats. The sheep will go to heaven, the goats will go to hell. And what's the criteria? A simple little criteria. I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was away from home, you took me in. I was in prison, you came to see me. I was sick, you came to see me. Come and take that which has been set up for you from all eternity, That's heaven. But those who are saying, when Jesus asked, well, you know, I was in a mother's womb down in San Antonio, and you didn't do a thing to support me. In fact, you supported to kill me. That's where the goats are. I don't want to use profanity, but these will go to hell. And so, let's make this again a beautiful city where the Spirit of God reigns. Do I get 3 more?
What is your name?
Pardon me?
Did you get that name? Okay, please continue, Bishop.
May I continue? Thank you. I'd just like to say this. Let's look, this is called the city of St. Anthony. St. Anthony, was a great man, huh? And I remember when I was in Sanyo that we had many visitors from all over the United States and world come to our city because of our program. And councilmen and the mayor pro tem would come and present the alcalde. I can't remember it word for word, but it was a vision of what San Antonio stood for. It was beautiful. I think we need to revisit that, because part of it says this is a place where you can raise your family. I don't think so. And we want to thank those of you that have been anti-God in this sense, that you have helped those of us who stand for God to form a movement. It's not organized like so many things are organized, but it's just simply that all of the religions of San Antonio have come together because of what you have done in the past. It's a movement. No one's in charge, but there's a lot of people who are making it happen. If you pass the amendment that I have heard about, I'm not as sharp as some of the people before me at this microphone, but if you pass what I think you had in mind from the very beginning, to ratify the corruption that is already in place in this city, then you can be sure that you will just help to continue to build this army that says, yes, I know that many people in our town are not Catholic, but I think that just about everybody has an admiration of Pope Francis. And I like what he said, basically that all of our good people, good Christians and other good people of goodwill, should be in politics, because politics is one of the highest forms of charity. Why? Because it's for the common good of everybody, not for any self-interest or any payoff. Well, I would like to say just real simply, I speak from my heart. I love San Antonio, and I think you do too. And that's why we're here today. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bishop Yanta. Luz Lozano. Okay, thank you. Jeff Judson, followed by Harry Padilla.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I believe that the changes y'all are making to the development ordinances today make a mockery of your entire system of land use regulations. It's, as you know, as you do this frequently, it's a very elaborate process you go through. You have almost 500 employees in the Development Services Department. You spend $15 million a year in enforcement, and It's done at huge expense to the development community, raises costs to consumers and homeowners and businesses, and it's ostensibly designed to control growth and protect neighbors from incompatible uses of land. If someone doesn't comply with every detail of the regulations, then they are not granted their certificate of occupancy, or they're not granted the zoning that they need. But in this instance, the City Council and the Development Services have broken all of their own rules to favor a special interest group in Planned Parenthood, which a large portion of this community finds reprehensible. Planned Parenthood, or any business for that matter, deserves fair treatment under the law. But they don't deserve, and nor do the people of San Antonio deserve, the kind of crony favoritism that has been given in this instance. In case you hadn't noticed, voters are increasingly disgusted with the crony favoritism that politicians have been doing so much lately at all levels of government and in all political parties. But when you combine cronyism with doing so for an abortion facility, I can promise you that the actions that you take today will not be forgotten. So I hope that you will reject the changes that you are considering making to the code to allow this facility to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Judson. Harry Padilla. Okay, thank you. Brad Wheeler.
Mayor and City Council members, my name is Brad Wheeler. I am an attorney. I'm a Southern Baptist minister, and I work with the San Antonio Family Association, overseeing their media, creating much of their content, and managing their web pages. And I have a brief statement. I don't think there's a lot that you haven't heard me or the members of SAFA say on this matter, but I do want to raise this question. Will Mayor Taylor and the council, in their first known vote that impacts surgical abortion, actually vote to expand abortion services and support Planned Parenthood? The truth of the matter is, many of the citizens of San Antonio, in fact, the bulk of the citizens of San Antonio, don't want a definition of ambulatory surgical centers, which allows abortion clinics in C1s and adjacent to residential areas. You've heard today from the residents of Dream Hill Estates. They're not happy with the DSD's arbitrary ruling. They're not happy with what has taken place and what has been allowed to be done to their neighborhood. Further, they are not pleased or happy that you as a council have refused to give them an audience and vote on that measure and review it personally. They deserve better than what you have given to them. The bulk of the citizens in San Antonio don't believe it's right for the council to give Planned Parenthood the right to set up shop and kill babies within 50 feet of their homes. That's immoral and that's wrong. It damages property values, but it divides communities, as already has been stated. The truth is, the Zoning Commission did not vote to recommend or pass this new definition being brought by the Development Service Department. Even though there was a quorum, they did not vote to recommend this. The Zoning Commission did not. You need to understand, a vote for the Development Services ASC amendment with the definition of ASC combined with all the other medical uses is a vote for Planned Parenthood and for the expansion of surgical abortion in San Antonio. So we ask, who will you listen to when you vote today? Will you listen to the DSD, which did not get the Zoning Commission's pass on this, vote on it, or recommendation? Do you really want to give Planned Parenthood and other abortion businesses the right to kill babies in residential areas or in your own neighborhood? What we are requesting is that you provide a separate and distinct ASC definition, or you combine an ASC with a hospital, or the definition needs to be removed from the amendment altogether. Again, you need to remember, a vote for the Development Services ASC amendment is a vote for Planned Parenthood and the expansion of surgical abortion in San Antonio. And Mayor Taylor, pro-lifers do not vote to expand abortion in the cities they govern. Thank you.
Mike Konofsky. followed by Patrick Von Dolen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council, for your time. Today is as others have said, we've been at this over a year now, and a vote for Development Services redefinition of ambulatory surgery center amendment is a vote for Planned Parenthood and the expansion of surgical abortions in San Antonio. Imagine being a Dream Hill Estate resident, and this shows up, but it's Delantero. Delantero. Sounds like a fancy Italian restaurant or maybe a bowling alley. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know it's Planned Parenthood. But indeed, that's what this is. The expansion of that language would be tragic. You know, you've got to make this decision, and if you don't trust your own employees, who do you trust? Now, you have a zoning commission that is appointed by each and every one of you. That zoning commission did not pass this language. You can talk to your appointed people on that. They did not pass this. Yet you were led to believe that we just didn't have the people. I showed you video and where we counted, here, we counted 7 were present. There was a quorum. Yet you were led to believe that there was no quorum. There was a quorum. The vote was not taken. Zoning Commission did not pass it. So if you don't listen to Zoning Commission here, when do you listen to them? Here's the city employee that told the truth. There it is. Trenton Robertson. This is going back to 2140 Babcock. Trenton Robertson told the truth. He told the truth. He didn't get in trouble because of the substance was truthful. He got in trouble because, in his words, he did not bubble it up to the management, i.e. John Jaggs, Mike Shannon, Rod Sanchez, Kat Hernandez, whoever. I don't know who it is. But he clearly states right here it is not appropriate. So here we have a Development Services Department that has made a subjective decision, and it is subjective, it was not objective, and it went awry, it went south. So what do? We pass new legislation. That's what we're supposed to do. No, we should be holding people accountable to what's already in place. And that's what I urge you to do today, is to hold people accountable to what's already in place. And I'd like to share with you, we already have part of this. This is a flow chart of what we already have in place. The flow chart clearly states when there's a materially similar use decision, which means a subjective decision, this is to take place. Whether it's yes or no, it's to go to the Zoning Commission, and then from the Zoning Commission, their recommendation, and then ultimately come back here. You didn't hear this case. So clearly there's some processes and procedures that are being broken at the operational level. It isn't a legislative level necessarily. The fact remains, no matter how you slice this, the fact remains, here is a list. Just look at the history. Here is a list of 75 ambulatory surgery centers right here in San Antonio today. Do you know how many are in C1? 3. 2 anomalies and 1 not. The first is closed. That's an anomaly. I don't know why it's still on the list, but it is. It's on South Cross Street. The second is ambulatory surgery center in the middle of Santa Rosa Crystal Hospital, 200-acre campus. It's in the middle of it, and it already has buffer because of the 200 acres. The only one of the 75 that remain outside of C2 and C3, Planned Parenthood, 2140 Babcock. They are the only one, and they are an outlier. Here's the question. If that is setting new precedents, why in the world would we ever go out to this outlier and now change all the legislation, all the ordinances according to that one exception? I submit to you that is absolutely backwards. I encourage each and every one of you to vote no on this and go back to what we already have in place and take a look at the processes and procedures, because clearly we have it in place. You've done a fine job. It's just that we have to hold people accountable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Knupke. Patrick Von Dolen. Mr. Von Dolen, followed by Dennis Druyard.
Good afternoon. I have Sylvia Villarreal's time. Would you put that up for me, please, sir? Good afternoon, Mayor and City Councilman. I appreciate your attention. I know it's a hard distraction with cell phones. My kids catch me on it every day instead of looking at them. So I'd ask for your attention here. This is very important. Mr. Rod Sanchez said some things that need to be clarified. And I'd like to begin as it's being passed out. As you look at this on the screen, I want to give you a little prayer. In the Christian community, 3 o'clock hour is an important hour. It's the hour of divine mercy. And we're asking for divine mercy on you right now, that you would have trust in Him, trust in Jesus Christ, trust in God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, to do the right thing and make the right choice here. I'm going to offer this prayer for you, just part of it. We stand before you, Holy Spirit, conscious of our sinfulness, but we're aware that we gather in your name. Come to us, remain with us, and enlighten our hearts. Give us light and strength to know your will, to make it our own, and to live it in our lives. You desire justice for all. Enable us to uphold the rights of others. Do not allow us to be misled by ignorance or corrupted by fear or favor. We ask this of you who live and reign with the Father and the Son, one God, forever and ever. Amen. O most sacred heart of Jesus, I trust in you. That's what you should be saying right now, to do the right thing. You can do this. The last several days, several things have happened. I want to make sure I know it's been busy for you. But yesterday, we submitted a protest petition of the business owners, the property owners around 2140 Babcock. Within 200 feet, we submitted a protest petition regarding this vote. It will be coming an issue again for you, depending on how you vote. Yesterday, released, I'm sure you'll hear about it again. I submitted it to you through your own city office on the 4th floor. Mr. Dennis Druyard's review of the reviewer on the third party reviewer for the city of San Antonio, that third party reviewer that wasn't licensed to practice law in the state of Texas, but yet gave a legal opinion to the city of San Antonio. Got a review here. It was emailed to you. And I invite you, Mr. Druyard is a former assistant city attorney. I invite you to ask him questions today, past his time speaking. You've heard from your expert, the city's expert, Mr. Rod Sanchez, and the city attorneys, Ms. Susan Gwynn, and everybody else, all the other city attorneys here. And I encourage you to ask questions of Mr. Druyard in regards to his opinion, his professional legal opinion. He is licensed to practice law in the state of Texas, unlike Mark White, the third-party reviewer. So, who do you trust is the question. Do you trust people you appoint to commissions and boards? Or do you trust rogue, runaway development services employees? And I'm glad you're here, Rod, today, because I want to talk about you. I've been trying to have a conversation with you face to face. I've had a couple. And it's very important that each of you know what's happened at Development Services, because you have a runaway employee. We call him King Rod. Did you know that? King Rod Sanchez. And I don't do this lightly. I do this because after a year and a half of discussions and listening to him, it has come apparently clear he either doesn't have a very good memory, he doesn't know how to count, or he's lying to you and colluding. So can you trust DSD? I say you can't. April, Building-Related Fire Codes Appeals and Advisory Board. We appear before there in a hearing on a petition Michael Shannon, assistant director to Rod Sanchez, admits that they made a material similar use determination. That's where you say something similar, enchiladas and tamales, so you can be the same. Well, there's an anchor, not an anchor baby, but an anchor tenant that was remaining at 2140 Babcock, Mission Rehab. They're a minority owner, a minority renter. And because DSD allowed them, they worked with Planned Parenthood to stay there, they got to keep their medical clinic designation. They didn't have to go through a zoning process to notify neighbors. They made sure that they didn't go through a zoning process to change from a C1 to a C2, so the neighbors wouldn't be notified. By the way, would everybody everybody that's here to support residential property owners' rights, life, family, and against the DSD's amendment to the ASC, I'd like you to stand up, please. Thank you very much. The residents, would you continue standing? Everybody, you've heard from them before, you've heard from others, Dr. Tim Barker as well, Mr. Robert Berry. Well, Michael Shannon said there was a material similar use. The next meeting, building-related board, May, Rod Sanchez himself said three very astounding things in a public hearing. We've got a recording. I've shared it with you before. Share it with you again. He admitted in public hearing he didn't review the base zoning of 2140 Babcock. He didn't make the material similar use determination. He didn't know who did. How can that be? The Director of Development Services doesn't know who made the material similar use determination, or he just didn't want to tell us. He wasn't under oath, but he's in a public hearing amongst citizens. So who runs the show? Do you represent us, or do you represent him? In May as well, the Building-Related Board passed a resolution to the Board of Adjustments that they review the base zoning of 2140. They saw a particular problem with it. June, we appear before the Building-Related Committee again. I've got more time. Jack, who do I have?
Thank you.
June, the Building-Related Board meets again. They actually pass a resolution in which it says, Mayor and City Council review the base zoning of 2140 Babcock. They see a particular problem here. This is their super board. Stakeholders, construction, architects, engineers, your appointees. Who are you going to trust? They saw a problem. Let's fast forward to November, just last month. Rod Sanchez told several of you in the Neighborhood Livability Committee that the Zoning Commission didn't have enough bodies there. And then he said again, we didn't have enough of our people there. It's pretty ambiguous. I don't know exactly what it means. I don't know if that means he didn't have enough zoning commissioners there, or if he didn't have enough of his supporters on zoning commission there to do what he wanted them to do. But they did not pass a recommendation of the Development Services Amendment of the ASC. It's the DSD's version. They don't trust it. December 2nd, Rod Sanchez told you there were only 6 zoning commissioners there, and that's why they couldn't pass a recommendation. This is very objective. I'm not sure if he didn't remember correctly or if it's something else. But Rod Sanchez told you there's only 6 zoning commissioners there. Your zoning commissioner's there. She's over here, Ms. Francine Romero, Ron, Mr. Nuremberg. And it failed to process. They had a quorum. Are you going to listen to your zoning commission? If you're not going to listen to your zoning commission now, how can we trust you to listen to your zoning commission in the future? Are you going to listen to Rod Sanchez? There needs to be a check and balance. What's the check and balance going to be? I suggest to you the check and balance, there is a way. It's not the Development Services way. Show you this. This is a certificate of occupancy. Every business in the state of Texas and the city of San Antonio is required to have one. 1984 is the oldest one. 2008 is the newest one. None of them. We've requested several open records requests. None of them have come back with Planned Parenthood on it. Have you all asked Rod Sanchez for a copy of the certificate of occupancy that he says is valid, that Planned Parenthood South Texas is using? Have any of you seen it? I haven't. They won't give it to us. We've asked for it. How can you trust him? If you would. This is an ambulatory surgery center certificate of occupancy. It says ambulatory center on it. Here's another one. This is the ambulatory surgery center abortion facility called Alamo Women, just next half a mile away. It says medical clinic on it. Why? They're both licensed with the state of Texas as ambulatory surgery centers. You can't trust Rod Sanchez. He is a rogue employee, needs to be hamstrung, needs to be reined in. City Manager Cheryl Scully needs to do it. You can't trust the Development Services Department's proposal on the ASC amendment. Do right by the citizens of San Antonio. Protect the families.
Thank you, Mr. Von Dolen. Dennis Drouillard, followed by Harry Wood.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. I'm recovering from a cold, so if my voice is raspy, I apologize about that. My name is Dennis Drouillard. I'm an attorney here in San Antonio. I have represented various stakeholders in some of these matters dealing with 2140 Babcock, including the San Antonio Family Association. I previously represented Thelma Franco in what is now a dead lawsuit. And that is, in that lawsuit, that's where Trent Robertson's deposition was taken. I would like to tell you I am here in opposition to the UDC amendment regarding ambulatory surgical centers. And I will explain that very briefly later in my presentation. But before I do, I am going to have to explain to you some of the items that have occurred in this issue. And I want you to understand, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I truly don't. And to demonstrate my sincerity, when I took Mr. Robertson's deposition, when he broke down because he was explaining how he had understood that someone in the manager's office and someone in the director's office wanted him fired for his December 2014 letter, I did what I would not normally do. I took a break. I took a break so that Mr. Robertson would have the opportunity to compose himself. And the reason a lawyer would not normally do that in a deposition is because once a witness is no longer guarded, chances are they're more likely to speak the truth. But I took pity on him. In the same way, I'm asking you to take pity on the residents and the neighborhoods of San Antonio. If I may briefly reference my relationship with Dr. Barker and Mr. Berry. They had submitted a proposed amendment through the UDC process. Mr. Sanchez had already referenced that to you. At some point in time, they reached out to me to represent them on the matter because it became clear that there was going to be an effort to turn their amendment over. There was an effort underway for their amendment where they were trying to say very clearly that an ambulatory surgical center does not belong in a C1 district. There was an effort to change that through the definition. I won't say the very first thing, one of the first things I did is I reached out to the city attorney's office. I asked for a stakeholders meeting. I was told several times, we're thinking about it, we're thinking about it. At some point in time, I was told, you may comment. You may comment at public hearings on this matter. Thank you very much. It was a very clear effort to say, no, we don't want to meet with you. At that point in time, I served notice to the city that Mr. Berry and Dr. Barker were withdrawing their amendment. They were withdrawing their application for amendment. After that, I had repeated calls, repeated efforts from the city attorney's office to want to meet. For a whole host of legal reasons, it was too little, too late. But these are what your citizens, ladies and gentlemen, are facing. And so I'm reporting it to you, the governing body of the city of San Antonio. I know it is a large organization that you govern, and perhaps with the vetting processes in place, you are not given all of the information by staff. But there was absolutely no reason to ignore Dr. Barker and Mr. Berry until staff suddenly needed something. That is wrong. That is wrong. In the same way that how Mr. Robertson was treated by his own department, that was wrong. I took pity on that young man, and because of that, I gave him a break during that deposition. And I normally would not do so. But I accepted risk so that he can compose himself, because that was just wrong what the city did to that young man. Regarding the specific concerns about this amendment. We know that medical clinics and offices are already allowed in C1. That, I think, has been acknowledged by all stakeholders and sides. If you add the definition of ambulatory surgical center to that, then that means ambulatory surgical centers will be allowed in C1. And that is what these citizens and the community is concerned about. We have been told that for some reason they don't believe that ambulatory surgical centers should be separated. The letter that Mr. Von Dolen referenced, he has apparently, San Antonio Family Association has apparently published it, that I did yesterday regarding the reviewer's opinion, Mr. Mark White's opinion. I reference in there, and actually I believe Mr. White did the same thing. I referenced in there the two sources that the UDC requires reference toward when the director is supposed to make a materially similar use determination. One of them is Land-Based Classification Standards, or the LBCS, and the other is the North American Industry Classification System, or the NAICS. Bottom line, the UDC says that if you cannot find the use that you are looking to try to ascertain in the LBCS, the director shall go to the NAICS. The reason I'm referencing this is because I need to explain to you where ambulatory surgical center definition is. But before I do, when Ms. Franco had her lawsuit ongoing, I had the opportunity to cross-examine in court at a hearing an assistant director of DSD. It had been represented to us that this person had assisted in attempting to make the material use determination at 2140 Babcock. Under my cross-examination, that assistant director did not know what LBCS or NAICS was. Honorable members of this council, that's not possible if you are assisting in a material use determination. The code requires you to know what those are and to be able to cross-reference it. And so I found that shocking. However, NAICS is where an ambulatory surgical center is actually defined. There is a specific use in a zoning reference in NAICS, and I believe the coding is 621493. And that specifically says that ambulatory surgical centers are establishments with physicians and other medical staff primarily engaged in 1, providing surgical services, and it gives examples, or 2, providing emergency care services. And both of these are done on an outpatient basis. So respectfully, members of council, I submit to you it is possible to have a completely separate definition for ambulatory surgical centers for purposes of the zoning amendment you're looking at today. I respectfully request that you please vote down the proposed amendment as it's been submitted to you today. If there is consideration on what alternatives could be done, clearly I ask you to please separate the definition from clinics and ambulatory surgical centers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Driard. Harry Wood, followed by Rooney Brandstrom. Yes. To Mr. Ripley. Okay, Mr. Ripley, I'll call you in a moment. Oh, is Rooney Brandstrom here? You're Rooney? Okay.
25 years ago, I come from Sweden to marry my wife that was living here, and Bishop Jenta was marrying us. Then we went back to Sweden, and 16 years ago, God called me and my wife to come here to San Antonio to work here for Him. I am today a pastor at King's Mission Fellowship. And we are in the District 3. And what I want to say here today is this. Please do not support Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood should be required to follow the same regulation as other businesses. What you're going to vote here is not just political or financially. It's much more serious. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Branstrom. Gerald Ripley, followed by Ken Brown. No? Okay. Gotcha.
Mayor Taylor, City Council, my name is Gerald Ripley. I'm pastor of Abundant Life Church in District 10. I've been a pastor in San Antonio for the past 35 years. This issue touches my colleagues in every City Council district. In District 1, Pastor J.B. Foster thanked me for inviting him to speak today and said he would. However, he had to be out of town. He's at Bethesda Temple on Bassey Road. You've heard Pastor Bronson from District 3. From District 4, Pastor Brian Thomas, Community Bible Church, Brook City base, was scheduled to speak this morning, but when we learned that speaking was this afternoon, he's on a flight out of town. In District 5, Pastor Ruben Torres sent me an email. He says, I lament that I'm unable to speak. My wife has a doctor's appointment this afternoon. In District 6, Pastor Steve Branson, out of town today. However, he spoke at Citizens to be Heard last week. You'll be able to hear from Pastor Flowers in District 7. In District 9, Pastor Art Gonzalez is planned to speak. I'm from District 10. Harvey Samuel Firestone was an American businessman, founder of the Firestone Fire and Rubber Company. On a wall of the business in my neighborhood that bears his name is a quote from him. I believe fundamental honesty is the keystone of business. That quote is on every Firestone store in San Antonio and in Texas and in the United States. It's company policy. It's an excellent philosophy to live by, be a great philosophy to govern by. Harvey Firestone would not have approved, condoned, or excused the deceptive tactics used by Planned Parenthood to secure a C1 zoning permit at 2140 Babcock. I fervently hope the majority of you don't either. You're facing a messy situation. It's one of those defining moments that comes along about once every city council term. The mess began when the C1 parent building permit was issued. I believe you could go to any fifth grade math class in your district and pose the following math problem. C1 is a maximum limit of 5,000 square feet. Business X has 5,836 square feet. Should Business X receive a C1 zoning permit? I believe you get the same answer every time. The answer is no. Who was the city employee who didn't come up with the correct answer? We'd know that name if we had transparency. And why did that employee come up with the wrong answer? Was it lack of math skills? Was it intimidation? Was it bribery? What was it? The mess was increased when associated permits were issued that extended the square footage to 22,300 square feet. What is the name of the employee or employees who extended the square footage? Was there no one in the process who had the integrity to say, this is wrong? Michael Shannon admitted a materially similar use decision had been made citing an eye center that had a C1 zoning. Later it was revealed that that eye center actually had a C2 zoning. Either we have fabrication or ineptitude. The mess grows. Rod Sanchez stated he didn't review the zoning of 2140 Babcock, he didn't make the materially similar use decision, and he didn't know who did. That's very troubling. As director, Mr. Sanchez is the one person tasked with making a subjective decision. If he didn't make it, he's derelict in his job performance. If he didn't make it and doesn't know who did, he's not on top of things in his department. And if he made the decision and he knows who did, then he's flat out lying. Whatever the case, Mr. Sanchez is not performing his job at the level one would expect. He wouldn't receive a good performance review this year if I was his supervisor. The mess is now compounded since Planned Parenthood is reputedly performing abortions at 2140 Babcock. Presumably, they're using cold storage, which is not permitted in C1 zoning. If their permit was to be revoked because they're exceeding the parameters of C1 zoning, the specter of a lawsuit looms over the city. That's the elephant in the room. The message Isaiah gave to King Ahaz in chapter 7 is apropos. Do not faint or be faint-hearted. Do not fear or be faint-hearted. Planned Parenthood lost a similar lawsuit in the state of Illinois. It's a big mess. How should one deal with a big mess? The best thing is to get to the very bottom, clean things up, and start the process again. The worst thing to do is to make an attempt to cover up the mess so it's out of sight. The mess will still have an odor. Today you will consider changing the C1 zoning code. If you vote to change it, these three things will happen. One, you will accomplish the purpose of a cover-up of the Planned Parenthood zoning mess. It will be intentional on your part. It can't be unwitting any longer. I'll need more time.
What's the name? Okay, thank you. Please continue, Dr. Gerald.
Secondly, it will allow the impression of whitewashing the Planned Parenthood zoning mess. Thirdly, and most egregiously, it will pollute the governmental climate of our city. It will demonstrate the dearth of transparency, the lack of integrity, and the absence of sufficient fortitude by the majority of you to insist upon honesty, transparency, and justice. These things, as Bishop Yonda said, are for the good of the whole community. If you choose honesty, transparency, and justice, you will invoke the blessings of Deuteronomy chapter 30. Don't whitewash the Planned Parenthood zoning mess. Vote no on changing the C1 code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Betty Eckert, followed by Ramon Rodriguez.
Excuse me for 1 second. She called my name, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Betty Eckert.
I do want my time. I'm just not involved in this issue, okay?
I'm sorry?
I was signed up,
Yes.
but not for this issue. So
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to hold my time after you finish this.
Okay. Well, this is the last issue. I didn't have you on anything else, but we'll come back.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Eckert. Can you?
That's the first time that happened, but anyway, that's okay. You know, we really shouldn't have to be here today. Most of us should be out shopping, making cookies, making sure that needy people are being provided for at this time of year. But instead, here we are at City Council again. I just wonder how many of you received campaign donations from Planned Parenthood. If, in fact, or if you're affiliated with any of the organizations or sit on any of the boards. If you do, then you will have to recuse yourself from voting today. If you vote, you're in violation. So think about your conscience. I don't know if you know your financial statements or not, or whether you received anything or not. But if you did, I'm suggesting that you leave this dais, that you do not vote. Don't make the same mistakes we've made in the past. Now, I've got a problem with the word Planned Parenthood. We're not planning parents. That's not what they're doing. They're not helping parents plan anything. They're destroying our children. We don't want them in our neighborhoods. This information that's going out today here at City Council should have gone out to every neighborhood. This should have been publicized. We should have had a campaign. Let people know what's going on in San Antonio. Now you're strapped with a decision. I don't know how it even got to City Council. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've seen. I sort of feel sorry for Councilman Newenberg because he's been guided wrong. His whole career has been damaged by mistakes that was made by this city. I think our city manager needs to do a better job in letting you people know what the city staff are doing. There was a quorum at that meeting. I attended the meetings. Other people attended those meetings. Do we not pay any attention to our boards and commissions? If we don't,
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Eckert.
if we do not pay any attention to our boards and commissions that you appoint, why in the world do we have them? Let's do away with boards and commissions. Or do you pay attention? The zoning did not approve this. Didn't it raise some red flags? Why did it get here to City Council? We're counting on you, Mayor, to do the right thing and to lead our city. We're counting on each and every representative in each and every district to represent us. We can't do it alone. We elect you to represent us. Now we're asking you to represent us. Do the right thing. Do not vote on this today. Take your time. We've made some mistakes. What did we do with the police and fire department? What are we doing now? Spending thousands of dollars on lawsuits. This, too, will become a lawsuit for the city. The taxpayers are getting tired of paying money for lawsuits. There's so many more things to do. Our safety, our streets, our drainage, senior centers, the quality of life in San Antonio. Each and every one of you have a duty to do the right thing today. And again, I'm going to tell you, if you receive money, I'm going to suggest to you, look at your financials. You cannot vote on this today. You would have to recuse yourself, as I would have to do if I was serving on a board. You have to and you must. Remember, you've got to live with yourself. You know who received what, and you know what board you serve on. I'm asking you to do the right thing, each and every one of you. Some of you, I know, don't really care and don't want to hear me speak, but I'm going to be here till we get this right. I'm not going away, and neither is this group. So do the right thing today. Make the right decisions. Be careful about what you do. You got one chance to do the right thing. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eckert. Danny Petrie, followed by Charity Farrar.
Hello. Hello, City Council. It's good to see everybody here. My name is Danny Petrie. I reside in District 1. And item 29 is an amendment that was not passed by the Zoning Commission. Why? And yes, they did have a quorum. This redefinition does not and will not benefit any neighborhood. Why would you pass this definition that allows an ASC to be next door to a residence, to your house, without notice and without public hearing? You all have all talked about revitalizing neighborhoods. Why? Why, when you consider passing bad zoning laws like this amendment that will erode at the neighborhood of Dream Hill Estates and other neighborhoods in my district, District 1? Rod Sanchez mentioned earlier common law. It has been common law and precedent that over 70 ASCs have been zoned C2 or above. So why do we want to break with the common law? And yes, it is common law. The DSD had a letter that stated this common law back in December 2014. I hold a petition here that was submitted on December 14th with over 1,200 signatures. And this petition states that they do not approve of the illegal land use found at 2140 Babcock, which violates the common law. If you vote for this amendment, then you will be acting irresponsible and be considered negligent. Is that what you want your legacy to be? Irresponsible and negligent. Negligent to the citizens of San Antonio and to the neighbors of San Antonio. A vote for this amendment can only be viewed as a vote for Scully and for special interest. That's the only reason that you could vote for this, only rational reason to vote for this. Anything short of voting no to this redefinition is not acceptable. Voting no is a vote for families. Voting no is a vote for justice. Voting no is a vote for life. Please vote no and withhold the common law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petrie. Charity Farrar, followed by Shireen Galloway.
Madam Mayor, City Council, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Charity Farrar. I am the Executive Director of Life Choices Medical Clinic. Steve Branson is my board chair, and I am in your district. Mr. Lopez, thank you for being here. I am here to urge you to vote no on the amendment. I run a nonprofit women's clinic. We do not charge for our services, and there are many clinics like mine around that would be happy to make sure that our men and women are given proper medical care. I would not want my clinic, which we do not do surgeries, we do not do any of those type of things. We are strictly a doctor's office, if you will. But I would not want my clinic next to a neighborhood because there is much traffic that is involved in that. We don't want neighborhoods, homes, families disrupted. We want to provide valuable services for our men and women and make sure that our community is healthy and that they are getting the health care and the education that they need. I personally would not want an ambulatory surgical center in my neighborhood. I do not believe that you would want an ambulatory surgical center in your neighborhood. But I do recognize that we have men and women who need quality health care. Mary, you've been to my clinic. You know what type of an organization we run. I would encourage all of you to come to our clinic and see what's happening. We are fully prepared to move out and to open more clinics around town so that we make sure that our citizens are getting good quality health care. If you have any doubt about that, come on down. Let's talk. Let's see what we can do. But I am urging you today to take pity on our neighborhoods that are going to be affected by this. I'm urging you today to vote no on this particular amendment, and let's see what else we can do together. But we are here to work with you, not against you. We want to work in tandem with the city so that we can be sure that our citizens are getting what they need and our city is strong. We do not want to tear our city down. We want to build our city up. So I appreciate your time today. I know that you are considering this very earnestly, and I pray that you will have wisdom and great knowledge today to do what you need to do. Thank you for your time. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Ms. Charity. Shireen Galloway, followed by Charles Flowers.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to start off by reading from the scriptures, Proverbs 24:11. And it says, "If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn to death, and those that are ready to be slain, if thou say, Behold, we knew it not, does not he that ponders the heart consider it? And he that keeps your soul, does he not know it? And shall he not render to every man according to his works?" And the second one I would like to read is, again, Proverbs 31:8, which says, "Open thy mouth for the dumb, which is the voiceless, in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction." Our Declaration of Independence says that the first right we have is life itself. And we, as a strong, great nation that we are, go around the world and do benevolence. We defend, we feed, and we rescue. My question is, why are we not doing more for our own citizens, the unborn? Over 55 million have been killed in abortions. It is abominable to me to think, when I think of a residential area and I think about the sun, children playing, laughing, having fun, that's one of the most beautiful things to me. And it's like light. And for you to put an abortion clinic is putting a dark cloud of death over that residential area. For those of you who are Christians, we're not Christians outwardly. We're Christians inwardly. Our hearts and our soul are circumcised to obey God. For those who are not Christians, you still have a moral compass, a heart to know right from wrong. I want to ask you to please not put this abortion clinic in this residential area. It is very appalling that they would call it an ambulatory surgical. That continues the lies and deception and propaganda of Planned Parenthood, which is what they stand for: lies, propaganda, and deception. And it's a culture of death. Please embrace life. Please leave that legacy for our generations to come. I want to say that you all have today the power of life and death in your hand and in your vote. Choose life. Choose life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galloway. Charles Flowers, followed by Selena Garcia.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak with you again today. And we have been here before. And we really want to work together with the city and help promote things that are healthy in the neighborhoods in the city. I noted that several people that came before today used scripture. Sometimes when it's done in a public setting, it's almost like a turnoff. But the reality is this, that there are people whose lives are really guided by what they understand as principles from Scripture. It is not something being put forth as a show. It is really what motivates their lives. It's what they use to make decisions. It's the basis of the thought process that they move forward with. And so when they come into a setting like this, they're going to many times embrace those scriptures and speak to them because it is the formation or it is the basis of the formation of their decisions. I was really encouraged, as I heard many people do. I'm going to use one myself, and then I'll be out of your way very quickly. In Proverbs 14, verse number 4, it says, "Where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but much increases by the strength of the ox." It's a funny to me. Where there is no oxen, the crib is clean, but much increase comes by the ox. The inference is this, that if you want the strength of the ox, you got to put up with him making the crib dirty. Everything everyone says is not palatable to everybody. But in the midst of all of that, there is something certainly to be considered. And in this case, these that have presented things before you today have not been uninformed. They've not always been as pleasant as I would have liked for them to be, probably as not as you would like for them to be either. But they're not uninformed, and they're not radical, and they're not haters. They're people who are trying to live out the very tenet of their faith, and to believe that that faith requires us as a people to get involved in the process. It requires us to do it. We cannot remain passive. We have for too long remained passive, and we have suffered the consequences of that. We have seen that right here in our own city, and we don't want to remain passive any longer. So while you're considering what you need to consider today, I do ask that you deny the definition of ambulatory surgical centers. You've had enough of sound arguments from a number of people that have stood before you today to give you enough impetus to do that. I encourage that happen on your account, and deny this definition and do what has been recommended. Either formulate a separate definition or leave it out altogether. Thank you so much today for your time.
Thank you, Reverend Flowers. Selena Garcia, followed by Rhett Smith.
Good afternoon, City Council members. Thank you for being here. My councilman is Chris Medina, and he's here today, and I don't want to take the blessing for granted. It's not every day that your councilman actually is here, as I learned at a Citizens to be Heard. I'll try to be brief. I was supposed to come during my lunch break, but it's now really late. Like other citizens, I heard about this case in the local media, the San Antonio Current, and they said that an out-of-state lawyer had audited and found that the case was in compliance. So now it's trying to be rezoned, and I was thinking, well, what? And so, of course, I can't trust the media or anything that they publish, so I have to put more effort into researching. So I had to go and find the congressional hearings that happened with Planned Parenthood, because I always thought also that maybe Planned Parenthood does offer mammograms, but then it turned out they didn't have a single mammogram machine. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, and so then I saw some videos of them selling baby body parts, and of course the media says that, it's heavily edited, but then look at what else the media says, so I can't trust that. But I mean, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And, an abortion is killing the life of babies. But of course, moral issues and moral education comes and starts in families. So it's not crazy for me to think that City Council would care about families, because families are the nucleus of society. Families compose communities. Communities compose a society, and City Council and city government represent society. I'm a millennial. And I've never lived through a world war, and I pray to God that we don't have to live through a world war. But, I would like to be part of a generation that can recognize right from wrong, and that will stand up for what is right. And, I just pray that y'all discern, and that y'all value the residents here, and that really are just here out of love, We shouldn't be afraid when love makes demands on us. And sometimes, these women that are going to Planned Parenthood could be there out of desperation. We must have compassion on them, and offer choices that are good for everyone. And please honor the residents here that are speaking, and all of us that have sacrificed time and effort to be here. We have compassion on you guys. I wouldn't want to be in y'all's situation right now. But please think about the future of San Antonio. We brag about the Spurs being such an ethical team and having so much good character, and the city is beautiful. We should be counting our blessings that we don't have the violence of Bernardino or all these other Baltimore things. Let's not take things for granted. We must be humble. Please vote no, and I'm grateful for y'all choosing to be public service, and please use your gift. Use your gift wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Rhett Smith, followed by Nicole Hudgens.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor, and each member of the City Council, and all our citizens that have come here today. It is so important that we have this time, that you and I have this time. And we've asked for this in the past, and thank you today for granting it so that we can at least have our time to communicate. It's so important that a community be able to do this. I want to say that I've been here many times before. Some of you know that I've probably been a candidate more than any other person in this city. And I want to tell each of you, because I consider each member of the City Council who I know, each of you personally, and I hope we're considered friends. I certainly consider it that way. With the exception of the City Council district where I live, Mr. Trevino and I maybe have not met as frequently. I just moved from District 10 to District 1. But I would not ask you today to vote in a way that I would not vote myself if I were in your seat. So today I want to remind you of the basis of who we are and what we are as a country, as a people. Our first freedom. The first freedom I consider the First Amendment, the freedom of religion, the freedom to do what we are today, speak, to petition, to address our government. And I want to congratulate every person of faith that is here today, because it is so important to come forward and to be able to express our faith. And I'm asking you today on this particular issue to consider relocating the Planned Parenthood Center. I have been to the Planned Parenthood location. We have prayed at the sidewalk many times. And I am asking you to exercise your faith today and think of some alternative for this facility. There are many issues that are represented in this city. This is a great city, a city that has a lot of alternatives, and we can find an alternative here today. And thank you for giving us this time. We've been waiting a year, more than a year, to come and address this issue. So thank you, Mayor Taylor, and our City Council members, and my City Council member, Mr. Trevino. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Nicole Hudgens.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. My name is Nicole Hudgens, and I'm a policy analyst for Texas Values Action. We're a statewide family policy council, and our legal team, including our president, Jonathan Sines, have handled issues like this on the city, state, and federal levels. As this council well knows, Planned Parenthood is an organization that claims to be for women's health. But as the recent videos, congressional and state Senate hearings, legal reports, and testimonies have revealed, they're an organization that has made profit by preying on precious women in times of crisis pregnancies. They call children blobs of tissue and then kill those children for profit. They've been caught not reporting sexual abuse of their clients and have lost state Medicaid funding because of fraud. And personally, as a child as someone who was born 2.5 months early, it breaks my heart to think of the children who will go through those doors but will never come out alive. Yet as this council has allowed this organization to operate illegally in its city. They knew that this building was not permitted under current zoning laws and allowed them to operate anyway. What other city officials are going to ignore laws and then check them later? Government officials who are of the mindset that they're above the law are of the same mindset that led to the disaster of Kermit Gosnell and the killing of women and babies outside of the womb. There are testimonies of Planned Parenthood workers who have seen children's body parts disposed in sewage systems. Will this city be responsible if little Johnny in Dream Hill Estates wakes up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and sees floating body parts in the toilet? A non-abortion ambulatory surgical facility can't operate here, would not be allowed to operate today, yet right now as we speak, this Planned Parenthood facility is allowed to operate. Why are we letting an organization that has lost state Medicaid funding because of fraud, has tried to hide sexual abuse of clients, admitted on tape to selling baby body parts so their executives can buy Lamborghinis, why are we letting this organization have a say in an entire city's zoning laws? That's crony capitalism at its worst. You as elected officials cannot look the other way when you're dealing with medical facilities and people's lives in your hands. Not only is this facility a threat to residents, but due to the circumstances and lawlessness that you've allowed, no woman can walk through that door with the assurance that she will be safe. I urge you to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudgens. David Mayorga. David Mayorga.
Mayor, City Council. Although Planned Parenthood does conduct other services, the fact of the matter is that 51% of Planned Parenthood's yearly income, their only self-sustaining revenue source, comes from abortion, $329,000 per year. And 40% of all reported abortions committed in the United States occur at a Planned Parenthood facility, making it by far the largest abortion provider in America. Thanks to Roe v. Wade, abortion is legal in the United States. But that does not mean this council should bend and change the law, making it easy for abortion facilities to operate in our city. In a citywide poll, the following questions were asked. Do you oppose abortion facilities right next door to your home? 92% of the respondents answered yes. Do you oppose local governments changing zoning laws to allow abortions next to your home? 91% of the respondents answered yes. Would you sell your home and move if your local government allowed abortions to be performed next door to your home? 84% of the respondents said yes. In one of my favorite Christmas stories, A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens writes, Scrooge followed to the window. Desperate in his curiosity, he looked out. The air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Some few, they might be guilty governments, were linked together. None were free. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He had been quite familiar with the old ghost in a white waistcoat with a monstrous iron safe attached to its ankle, who cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant, whom it saw below upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was clearly that they sought to interfere for good in human matters and had lost the power forever. $329 abortions per year, that's on Planned Parenthood. Bending and making it easy for them to operate in San Antonio by changing city law, that would be on you all, City Council. Please, I beg of you, interfere for good on this human matter while the power is in your hands and before the power is lost forever.
Thank you, Mr. Mayorga. Okay, Ken Brown, and as he comes forward, I'd like to remind everyone that item 29 includes multiple UDC amendments, and Mr. Brown is speaking on a different one.
Ken Brown, 112 East Pecan. our firm had submitted an amendment to the UDC, the QD Quarry District. The amendment was to allow for an easement on an abutting property to satisfy the requirement of a building setback within the Quarry District. That amendment has gone through TAC, through Board of Adjustment, through Zoning Commission, through Planning Commission, and is here before you today. The reason why I'm here is because I've been working with the City Attorney's Office to clarify how the city would be a partner in enforcing this. And the clarification is to allow them to enforce the easement on the abutting property. So that is a clarification of an amendment that has passed every board and commission. And I would respectfully request if you would consider that today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brown. That concludes all the citizens who asked to speak on this item. So just for clarity's sake, I'm going to, again, since this item 29 includes multiple UDC amendments and council members may have comments or revisions to more than one, I'm going to call council members as they have asked to speak, and they can comment or propose amendments. We'll go through all the council members, and then we'll vote on the balance of UDC amendments, excluding those where there's been a request for amendments, and then we'll go back to the amendments. Everybody cool with that? Okay. All right, we'll start with Councilman Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Mayor. First of all, I would request to pull UDC Amendment 35A101 and 35311, Table 311-2, non-residential use matrix permitted use from the UDC recommendations for further discussion. These are the amendments that involve what we've been listening to this afternoon, the ambulatory surgical centers and other facilities. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I too would like to thank all of you who turned out today. Last week we had the opportunity during Citizens to be Heard to hear over 90 people showed up to express their position on this very, very sensitive and important issue. I'm very proud of the fact that people do stand up and their voices are heard. I think that's so important. And the reason I bring this up at all is because when I first heard about the problem with Dream Hill Estates, I also heard the residents come forward and say, we didn't have a voice. We weren't notified. And it really was strictly the whole point of how things were written in the code. Well, we need to figure out how to solve that problem. Well, here's what we're going to do. And I talked to my staff about this. I said, you've got to work with the DSD and work with our attorneys. You've got to figure out a solution to this problem. What is a way with the wording that the state has, the wording that we have, that we can solve this, we can do something that gives a voice to these neighborhoods that would have something like this come into their area. Therefore, and listen to this is important, everybody, we are proposing ambulatory surgical centers require a special use designation. Don't forget that term, special use designation, to be allowed in the neighborhood commercial, that's NC that you've heard about, in C1 zoning districts as a part of the 2015 Unified Development Code UDC amendment process. In other words, we are amending the amendments. We are rejecting what Development Service brought forward, and that's why we'll be voting on with what I'm going to propose as a motion, a way to reject what they brought forward and instead include what I'm talking about here today. With the addition of special use in the NC and C1 zoning districts, the zoning process, which includes public hearings at Zoning Commission and City Council, are both necessary in order for anything like that to pass. This process gives neighborhoods an opportunity to learn about the proposed development in the area and allows City Council the final approval in this process. This process, the process that was used at the 2140 Babcock Road, was based on an interpretation, remember that word, an interpretation of like uses within the current UDC, because as it stands, the ambulatory surgical center is not defined in the UDC today. By approving the definition of an ambulatory surgical center and tying the definition to the state administrative code, interpretation then can be prevented. Had this amendment been in place that I'm proposing this afternoon, 2140 Babcock could have been stopped, and everybody needs to understand that. I want to give a voice to our neighborhoods. I think it's a basic responsibility of this council to defend our neighborhoods and let them know when something like this is occurring. I think it's absolutely essential that we follow this path. Therefore, just to repeat, this change requires that neighborhoods are notified, that there's a transparency in this process, that it goes before zoning, and I expect every one of you there down at the zoning commission so that they hear the way that a neighborhood feels about whatever is being proposed. And third, that it goes to city council, and likewise that we hear the same thing. I think it's absolutely essential that we have that transparency, that everybody here has a voice in the process. And with that, Mayor, I'd like to move for the following amendment, which our city clerk will read.
Amend Table 31-2 of Chapter 35 of the UDC to require a specific use authorization for the following use entries and zoning districts: medical, clinic, physician and/or dentist in N, C, and C1, medical, chiropractor office in NC and C1, medical, laboratory, dental, or medical in NC and C1, reducing salon in C1. Amend Table 31-2 of Chapter 35 of the UDC, adding LBCS codes 6512 and 6514 to the medical-clinic, physician and/or dentist use matrix entry in Table 311-2 of Chapter 35 of the UDC. And finally, approval of the amendments to the definition of ambulatory surgical center and clinic, dental, or medical in Appendix A of Chapter 35 of the UDC as presented by staff.
Thank you very much. I think that it's very important that we had the official wording of that into the record, and I know that I've passed on to all of my colleagues here exactly what we mean by this and with this special use designation. And with that, Mayor, I would ask that we vote on this, and that I ask all my colleagues to support this to help solve the problem that all of these great citizens have brought for us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Gallagher. Councilman Saldana.
Thank you, Mayor, and let me do my best. I want to first thank Councilman Gallagher, because I know you brought this to our attention with some notice and gave us the specifics and the details of what this would do prospectively to any ambulatory surgical center who was considering moving into two specific zoning areas, C1 and neighborhood commercial. I want to ask Rod, because I know, Rod, if you could come up, I want to help understand this as well, because this is maybe a bit more complex than you might originally look at first blush. So, first of all, I don't have any other amendments but for just to discuss on this issue, to take some questions. But Rod, in this case, I know that the councilman has done his best to look for ways that we could compromise and find some additional notice for communities that would be seeing a ambulatory surgical center move into their neighborhood. They would go through the same zoning process where neighbors are notified, where it comes to the Planning Commission, the zoning, and then the City Council. Ultimately, we make the decision about whether that facility can or cannot go into that area. The bigger picture as well is that ambulatory surgical centers or a Planned Parenthood could go into other specified commercial zonings. What I mean is, am I correct with Councilman Gallagher's amendment? They would be allowed in C1 or NC with approval of the City Council, but
through a zoning case.
but they would be available to build without going through a zoning commission in C2 or C3 as
correct.
We currently exist with our current zoning.
Correct.
Items. I imagine that there's probably a reason why it should not be allowable in or around a neighborhood as neighborhood commercial or C1. And I've met with some folks who have been representatives for family association, and we discussed that point about what makes ambulatory surgical center unique in that it should not be around a neighborhood. And we went back and forth. Here was my analysis, and here's why I can't support Councilman Gallagher's amendment to this, is that there is really no objective reason that an ambulatory surgical center should not go into a C1 or neighborhood commercial. There is objection philosophically about what goes on there. And what I've heard is that the type of business that operates, whether it's abortion or Planned Parenthood, could be seen as objectionable philosophically or religiously to those people in the neighborhood. That is correct, but there is no objectionable reason why it still would not fit in a commercial or neighborhood commercial, C1 or NC. For example, an industrial zoning or a C2 or C3 zoning wouldn't fit in a C1 or C2 being closer to the neighborhood because of the fact that perhaps the noise or the traffic, or if it was a junkyard, for example, the contaminants that might come into or close to a neighborhood. There are legitimate objective reasons why you wouldn't plan to put those near a neighborhood. And I haven't yet seen any objectionable reasons based on why or why a ambulatory surgical center would somehow impinge on a neighborhood, other than the fact that you might philosophically believe that it is not the right thing to be doing. So for that reason, unfortunately I can't support the councilman's request for that, because I believe that what will happen, this will not remove Planned Parenthoods from San Antonio or abortion from San Antonio. You can still go into a C2 or a C3, and I imagine that an organization that would run that type of business would not go after a C1 or an NC if we did pass the amendment. For the very logical reason that I'm sure they would go up against a neighborhood and a city council who would make a decision not based on the objectionable facts, but perhaps on a belief or a judgment of the type of business that exists there. And I just can't make a judgment on that. I'm not here to judge abortion or Planned Parenthood, but this is as plain as it gets when it gets to zoning. It is, does it fit in that area? Does it have the type of capacity for parking? And it would for C1 or NC. So, for that reason, I don't see an objective reason that we should be giving this special treatment as an exception. The only exception would be is that there is a philosophical difference with the type of business, and I don't see why that seeps into our discussions for zoning. So, Mayor, those are my only comments, and I understand the reason that the councilman brought it forward to try to make sure that we can compromise with those folks who have come out today. But at the end of the day, there are things out of our hands that will ultimately appease folks who are here talking in dissent, and that's a judgment on abortion or a judgment on Planned Parenthood, and that's not within our realm here. So I just wanted to make those comments, and I look forward to what the rest of my colleagues have to say on the issue.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Nierenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. And first, I just want to thank everyone who's been involved in the process of the parts of the UDC that Ken spoke about, the other parts. This is a pretty massive undertaking, UDC amendments, which we go through every 5 years, and they have significant impact on the growth of our city. So thank you for all the folks that were involved. I do also want to recommend that we're considering the comprehensive plan as we go through, because we know we're going to have a round 1A very soon with additional tweaks as the comprehensive plan begins to get put together. Now, with regard to the matter at hand and why everyone is here, and I also thank folks for taking time to come out, my concern, Councilman, with the amendment and the reason why I can't support this is that the underlying intent is to target one specific type of ambulatory surgical center. but the greater impact will land upon medical, dental, chiropractic, optometry, physical therapy clinics, and some laboratories which are currently permitted to operate within the neighborhood commercial and light commercially zoned properties. So let's be clear on one thing. Approval of any amendment today will not have any effect, any impact on 2140 Babcock. In District 8, there are about 94 parcels with C1 zoning that would be impacted now or in the future by this kind of amendment. The proposal would require each new business to go through a zoning process to obtain a specific use authorization. Existing businesses would become non-conforming, and also requiring them to rezone if they seek to increase or change their services. Fees would be incurred and deter new development on new sites. Revitalization efforts in our districts, or utilization of existing businesses in areas currently zoned to C1 to avoid the zoning process and pose difficulty obtaining financing. Good developments require us to be thoughtful planners, and that's what we need to do when we consider the UDC amendments. Unintended consequences where neighborhoods might lose proximity to pediatric, dental, or minor emergency services which actually are universally beneficial to communities. If the intent is to better protect residential neighborhoods and land use along commercial corridors, I would suggest my colleagues include a review, as stated, of C2 zoning uses, which are much more intense and abundant across the city and abutting neighborhood areas. Developments of gas stations, grocery stores, and restaurants which back immediately to residential properties are much more intrusive with direct noise, light, and traffic issues on residential areas, yet we are not talking about that. Therefore, I cannot support the amendment, and I would suggest that my colleagues do the same. We will continue to work, as we do as City Council members, on the things that are in our authority. We will continue to work with our neighborhoods anytime there is an opportunity that needs to be mitigated, whether it's traffic, noise, and other issues that happen. We have done that with Dream Hill Estates. We will continue to do that with every neighborhood that is impacted by new development. So on that note, Mayor, I cannot support the amendment. I do appreciate all the work that has gone into this, and we will continue to work together on the issues before us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Thank you. And Rod, I do have some questions about other amendments. I know we've been working on the comprehensive plan, and that may change the way some of these are presented. Will we do another UDC amendment issuance if there are changes in the comprehensive plan?
There's a possibility if when council adopts the comprehensive plan, if we are given direction to look at certain areas and come back with amendments to the UDC, that is certainly a possibility that we'll be back here again talking about other amendments.
And can we get the timeline on that that we can maybe review some? It seems like it was the end of 2016. Am I right about that, or are we into 2017 for the comprehensive plan?
I believe it's into 2016.
2016?
Right.
So we have transportation, sustainability, and the whole comprehensive plan. So we have an opportunity to review some of these things if we need to. I had some other amendments that were more neighborhood related regarding sidewalks and complete streets and that sort of thing that I never did get to put in. So we have an opportunity to revisit that, hopefully.
We can do that after the comprehensive plan process, yes.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And thank you also to everybody that has come out to speak on this issue. I have learned a lot with all of your efforts and all of your explanations. Regarding the neighborhood commercial zoning and the light commercial zoning are primarily in urban areas because we are the original 36 square miles of the city. We have narrower streets. Our streets are not designed to hold as much traffic as other areas of town, and so that's why you see the majority of neighborhood commercial and C1 zoning in the urban areas, primarily in District 1 and the downtown area. District 2 and District 5 is where we have the majority, and District 5 has the majority of neighborhood commercial zonings. And so we know that we want to continue to see investment our urban core, and I'm concerned that some of these amendments may make it more difficult for businesses to come into our district, make them more onerous. For a small business owner, having to apply for additional zonings could cost as much as $1,500 and delay a project as long as 8 weeks, and that can be pretty significant for a small business. So it's for that reason that I won't be supporting the amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Villagran.
Thank you, Mayor. In an effort to keep things separate, I would like to pull the amendment for Section 35-350, subsection 2, the Quarry District operating standards that was brought up. I do have a question, Rod, for you. They mentioned that this had gone through TAC, that this had gone through Planning Commission, and can you tell me what the recommendation from the City Attorney was to include in this and why that clarification? Because the main purpose of this UDC every 5 years is for clarification, and I think this could be a part of that clarification portion. Correct. And that makes it enforceable by the city as well. Could you?
Sure. The amendment.
And where do y'all stand on that?
Right.
Too?
The amendment went through the process. It came through with the recommendation for approval by commissions as well as city staff. The City Attorney's Office had a concern about the city not having some enforcement abilities with that language. So with the help of the City Attorney's Office, Mr. Brown's office, they worked on some language to clarify that the city does have enforcement ability. So staff is supportive of the change proposed by Mr. Brown earlier today.
And you have the revised language?
Yes. Perfect. Have it.
Okay. So, well then, if you all are okay, and if y'all have looked through it, and DSD and the City Attorney's Office are okay with this, then I motion to amend the following changes to Section 35-350, Quarry District Operating Standards, to modify subsection 2, natural buffer, to maintain the 55-foot buffer from public right-of-ways and provide enforcement capability to the City of San Antonio. And the revised language will be submitted to the city clerk.
Councilman Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor. I will start by apologizing to the 4 or 5 people whose comments during citizens I missed. I took the opportunity to step outside and do something I do frequently, which is to walk across the small alley between us and the cathedral and to go sit quietly in that cathedral, which has been a place of quiet and contemplation and prayer for San Antonians for almost 300 years. And as I was sitting there, I thought of my meeting earlier this week with some of you in this room, my neighbors who came to see me about this issue and express your profound and intense personal beliefs about it, which I'm deeply respectful to you for doing and appreciate your sharing your views with me. I seconded Councilman Gallagher's motion because I think he has made a sincere and thoughtful effort to propose a change to this UDC process that would give our neighbors a more transparent and real opportunity for real and genuine input into decisions with regard to developments in their neighborhoods, which it seems to me they're entitled to have. And as a result of that, I am profoundly grateful to Councilman Gallagher for the immense amount of time he has put into this and his work with each and every one of us individually in an effort to explain it and articulate the value of it, which I subscribe to. And because of that, as I said a minute ago, I seconded the motion, and because of that, I look forward to voting for Councilman Gallagher's amendments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Cryer. Councilman Trevino.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say that I do agree that Councilman Gallagher is a thoughtful individual and is trying to put together something that might be reasonable. However, I cannot support the amendment today because I do feel, as been stated before, this particular amendment is going to create an undue burden on a whole class of businesses, all small medical clinics particularly. There is no specific land use issue attached to this. But more specifically, I think districts like District 1 and 2 and some of these other areas where we're trying to get some of these more medical centers closer to neighborhoods and access to health care, I do feel that it's going to create an unnecessary burden for these medical clinics. I also want to add that I've known Rod Sanchez for many years. He's an outstanding individual. I think he is, and his staff have created a very thoughtful and a thoughtful approach to these UDC amendments. And so I just want to say again, I appreciate Councilman Gallagher's amendments. I cannot support, but look forward to the following UDC amendments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Lopez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to do my best to talk through this without choking up too much, because I really do have a sore throat and can't speak very. Some people may think that that's a good thing, but quick question for you, Rod. Last, I guess it was Monday, you were in my office and we were going through this amendment that the councilman had brought forward, and of course I heard him read it today, but I didn't have the original or that motion in front of me. Is what he inserted into this amendment the same language that you and I talked about?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for clarifying that for me. I certainly did, give it a lot of thought, and like most of us, and like just about on every issue, asking for some sort of wisdom from above. I think we all have a tendency of wanting to pray. Unfortunately, we only seem to want to pray whenever things are going bad. Sometimes we need to be praying when things are going good as well, and to give thanks to the Lord for what He's providing for us. One of the things that I think that I thank Him for is being able to have open dialogue with folks like you, Rod. I know that things have been said about you while we've been sitting here, and they've been said on several occasions, but I do have a lot of confidence in what you tell me, especially those things, those dialogues that we have in a private setting. I do believe that after our discussion on Monday, we had a very thorough, and I had a very thorough understanding of what I thought the intent of this was. I think the intent is good. Not being a subject matter expert in zoning as you are, I chose to go to those folks that are directly affected by it, so I decided to call various other healthcare providers and generally get an opinion of, so how is this going to affect you? And needless to say, the ones that I called said, well, there are a lot of things that you guys do that affect us in a lot of different ways. This will be certainly another thing, as they put it, another hoop to jump through, but just another hoop to jump through. It should not, under any circumstance, keep us from doing the good work in the community that we have been out doing. Several of the clinics that I spoke with certainly had reservations about just more litigation, more, as they say, hoops to jump through, but felt that it wasn't as onerous as perhaps it could be. That being the case, I guess the big question then becomes a real simple question, because what we're really talking about here, and let me kind of back up a little bit and say, I guess for about 10 years, a little over 10 years, I had the pleasure of serving on the the Santa Rosa Children's Ambulatory Care Center. Children's ambulatory care services included Any Baby Can. It included the South Texas Hemophilia Association, a whole large group of individuals that do an awful lot of hard, good work for needy people. Not once was there ever even the possibility of an abortion service coming into that type of an environment. So how difficult would it be for someone to open up an ambulatory care center? What would be the difference between the ordinance as it sits today versus what we're recommending in an amendment for that type of a care center?
Right. So if Councilman Gallagher's amendment passes, if that organization finds a piece of property that happens to be zoned NC or C1, that use will no longer be permitted by right. So what they would have to do is file a zoning case, go through the zoning commission, have a public hearing. If there'd be notice sent out to everyone within 200 feet, we'd post it in the paper, post it on the internet. Zoning Commission would make a recommendation, then it would come to council. We just did zoning before that. It would be one of the zoning cases that council would consider. It's a process that takes 6 to 8 weeks. So we basically add 6 to 8 weeks to the process. There'd be public hearings, and ultimately council would decide whether to allow it or not.
Right. So it would add a little bit to the process, kind of giving credence to what their comments were. Yeah, it's another hoop to jump through, but not to the point to where it would keep us from opening up our clinic or our service center. And ultimately, the decision is on this dais.
That's correct.
Again, I don't do this lightly. I did take it very, very seriously, and I again want to thank you for the several times that we had an opportunity to sit and speak, and get a good understanding of what's going on. It is important. I do have confidence in your decisions and the way you're going forward. And oftentimes, I guess, when you're in a position to make a lot of decisions, some of those decisions, or in many cases, those decisions are going to make people upset. And that oftentimes has the tendency of maybe having people say things that they feel are true but maybe aren't. But you certainly don't need me to be up here defending you. You're doing the job that you're charged with. I will continue to support the amendment as I understood it on Monday. And I want to thank my colleague, Mike Gallagher, for taking it on, for making sure that he was thoughtful about it, being working through the issue. And at the end of the day, I think what we need to do is, as Councilman Cryer did, get a little bit of opportunity to, look up to the sky and ask the good Lord, I don't know if this decision was the right one. I'm sleeping well tonight because of it, and I can only assume that He's put a light in front of us that we can follow, and whatever decisions we wind up making on this dais, I think they're being made with I have a lot of confidence in all 11 of us that are making decisions that are in the best interest, not only of our community, but of our soul, of our outlook of life, and that at night we can sleep. And I believe, regardless of how we vote, we'll be able to do that tonight because all of you have given this an awful lot of thought. So with that being said, Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Villagran.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to put some thoughts here for this amendment as well. And I think there's been many comments made, and I thank everyone for coming out and spending their afternoon with us. And what this is about, it is about the zoning and unified development code. That is what we are doing today, the amendments and the edits and the clarification. And Rod, if I have some questions on other issues, but also on the amendment at hand. But first of all, I want to thank you for all the work that you do. And I respect you, and I respect all of the heart that you put into your job. So thank you very much. There's the sidewalks for the small businesses with less than $50,000. Is that correct? Correct. Can you explain again the state requirements that exist right now?
For ADA purposes, if someone is doing a renovation or they're going into a new building, going to put a different use there, and they're spending less than $50,000, the state does not require that they bring the building up to ADA requirements. So that's kind of where we drew this amendment from. If the state's not requiring them to do the work on the inside, we thought that would be a good threshold for us not to require the work on the outside.
Okay. All right. Thank you for restating that again. And also, one thing, we mentioned it, or some of my colleagues mentioned it, with the comprehensive plan that we're looking at as well. And I know, Mayor, we're looking at the World Heritage and the World Heritage area, as well as land use and development in the future. And we're going through that process with a work plan as well. And I think these changes that we're looking at are going to have a direct impact. And even these changes with Councilman Gallagher's amendment, these changes will have an impact as well. But interestingly, most of the zoning that we have in and around our missions and the World Heritage, we have more I-1 zoning than we do NC zoning in the area. So this is going to take a big effort here. I do want to thank all all of the voices that have been here. I want to thank Councilman Gallagher for his efforts and also the efforts of all of my colleagues and their questions and their comments. And also, I also thank Councilman Lopez for all of the thought and having the conversations with those medical clinics and knowing that this will impact our dental offices as well with these amendments too. One last thing I wanted to share, because there were a lot of things that were shared in this crowd. It's that I want to speak grace and peace to this group, and that your gentleness will be known to all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Warwick.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank everyone in the audience for your patience with the process. This is our democracy, our city democracy, and how we move forward in order to make this a better place for all of us to live in. The first things first, I would like to talk about an amendment. Rod, if you could come up. Have you seen the language on our neighborhood market urban farming, table 311-1?
I have, Councilman. I understand where the amendment, actually your proposal is to go back to the amendment as it was submitted, where we would allow urban farming in R6, RM6, R5, RM5, and R4 and RM4 as a permitted right. What came out of the process was an S, actually, would require a zoning case if someone would have had an urban farm.
Well, but the issue that we have with that is that with vacant lots, you're not able to make that decision without the zoning case. Is that correct?
With the vacant,
because it has to be an accessory to the house, to a structure.
Right. An urban farm is a commercial use, basically. You would have that standalone lot. You'd be able to grow fruit and vegetables and sell it without a house. So that's an urban farm. And I think that's why the TAC and the Planning Commission, Zoning Commission thought that might be too intensive a use for a single-family neighborhood. So
well,
I think
the scale of a lot of these lots, especially if you look in the Promise Zone and you look in my district where we have hundreds of small lots that are either side lots that can't be developed on, or are just because of the economic characteristics of the neighborhood haven't been developed yet, but may be developed in future iterations of zoning processes. The community organizations and neighborhood organizations that want to use these lots that are currently moving forward with some urban gardens are doing a lot of good in the community, getting the kids to know about growing and where their food comes from, sure, as well as providing clean, sometimes organic food to these people who are, for a lack of resources, don't have the most healthy options in most of their convenience stores and some of their grocery stores as well. So with that said, I would like to make a motion, and the clerk will read the motion.
Yes, my understanding is your motion would be to amend the following. Table 311-1, residential use matrix, to allow by right a residential market garden in R4, R5, and R6.
Second one down. Is there a second?
We need a second.
To the restroom.
Is there a second for the motion?
No.
For Councilman
Can you
Ward's
repeat
motion?
the motion?
I'll repeat it. And that's to amend the following. Table 311-1, residential use matrix, to allow by right a residential market garden in R-4, R-5, and R-6.
Councilman, why don't you explain again?
Oh, I think my second just walked back into the room. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Okay, we have a second, but could you explain it again?
Yes, we can definitely explain it some more. There's urban gardens that are popping up. We have over 1,100 vacant lots in the Promise Zone. and there's nothing but trash and waste going on these lots currently. The community is cleaning up, but they're cleaning up and they want to do something with these lots, but developers and development hasn't come to these areas just yet. So they're putting urban gardens. They're using children from the Ella Austin Community Center, children from the different elementary and middle schools in the area, and they're teaching them about gardening, teaching them about food cultivation, healthy food options, as well as having people on the street that may not be doing positive things also helping to clean up these lots. And having to have a zoning case and all the additional time and expenses in that process is an undue burden for a lot of these small nonprofit organizations and groups, and we're just trying to avoid that burden if need be.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. Councilman Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Rod. If just to answer one more question for some clarification, because some of my colleagues who said they were not going to vote for this important amendment, I just for special use designation, I just want to know: cannot council waive the zoning fees for these smaller businesses?
The full council can waive a fee, yes.
Does everyone understand that it can be waived so it doesn't hurt those smaller businesses? Okay, thank you very much, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
I had a question regarding the urban farms, just for clarity. So does that mean only nonprofits can run the urban farms? Or does it mean that a small business could run an urban farm? I just would like some clarity
basically,
on that.
anybody, what Councilman Warwick's amendment would do in a single-family zoning district, the R6s, the 5s, and the 4s, if someone wanted to buy a piece of property, a vacant lot, and have an urban farm, meaning they would grow fruits and vegetables there and sell them from that lot, with his amendment, they would be able to do that by right. The amendment that came out of the process would require an S, a zoning case, so that council would have the ability to say yes or no and place conditions on it.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Saldana.
On the same topic, Rod, the urban farm, the first time I'm hearing about it, but I think the goal is somebody wants to do a farmer's market or urban garden. What's your position on this? Is there a staff recommendation?
Well, what came through the process was an S for those districts because it's a single-family neighborhood, and I understand where Councilman Work's coming from, and that may work well there, but if you take it to another district, it may not work well in your district. So staff and the Planning Commission, Zoning Commission felt an S would be appropriate for an urban garden.
With an S, they would have to get
a zoning case.
Zoning case,
right? Because this is if you will, it's a commercial operation. It's because you don't live there. You go and buy a piece of property, you use it to grow fruits and vegetables, and you sell from that piece of property.
And by your definition, that would be commercial and would necessitate either a commercial zoning within a residential or a special use, and you recommended a special use.
Right. We recommended a special use authorization. Councilman Warwick would like to amend that and say, no, I think we should do that by right.
So you wouldn't need to go to zoning?
You would not need to go to zoning. You could just go buy a piece of property, put a garden there, and sell fruits and vegetables from that piece of property by right.
Yeah, my only reflection on that, it would seem to me that if I were a neighboring property, if somebody was using it for a commercial purpose, I may want a notification of it, and I just don't know how many times this would spring up. So I don't know, Councilman, if it seems that this is a commercial use, and in this case, we're not asking them for a zoning change to commercial within residential, but we're asking for special use. You would rather it be a as of right or by right, which means they could pop up on their own, sell from there. Okay, I think that does give me a little bit of pause on this particular one. I don't know if other colleagues have other questions, if the councilman has other further bigger goals or aims, other than we did need to get past the fact that this could pop up around neighborhoods without notification, and I think that's what gives me a little bit of worry. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Medina.
Rod, I have a quick question. It was brought up earlier that the facility does not have a certificate of occupancy. Is that
At
correct?
2140 Babcock?
Yeah.
They do have a certificate of occupancy. They have, matter of fact, I think they have about 7 of them. The issue with that is you got to remember a C of O is good. It stays with the property as long as you keep the same occupancy classification. And that's what happened there. It's remained a clinic throughout the years. So the C of Os that Mr. Van Dolen was referencing to have somebody else's name on them, but they belong to that property. So that property has a C of O. If Planned Parenthood chooses, they could come in, they can pay $50 to Development Services and change the name on the C of O to Planned Parenthood, but that's not a requirement. So they do have a C of O. They have several C of Os for that property.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Nierenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to reflect a second on the urban farm amendment. Councilman, this is something I think it sounds great. I mean, I've had many conversations with folks in the urban farming community as of late, and I know there's a lot of changes in this round of UDC amendments regarding that. But the challenge I'm having is that this has been a long process, and making changes up here, specifically ones that are not recommended by the Development Services Director, to me deserve a little bit of discussion. So I think I'm headed in your direction, but I would like to have a little bit more discussion on that off of the dais before we take it up. That's why I'll if the motion remains, I'll tell you that I'm willing to have that conversation. I just can't support it today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Villagran.
Yes, Mayor, I think I'm kind of in the same vein right now, Councilman, because just talking about how big can it get, and does this mean that every residential property then can have an urban farm and then commercial farming on there, and also about parking? So and would this also need a plan amendment if there's a plan? So, that would be better if we had another discussion too. So I'll yield the floor now.
Okay, Councilman Ward.
Rod, can you clarify that if someone has a house and they do this already, if they have a house on the property, they can already sell fruits and vegetables at their property in our current UDC?
Well, actually, there's an amendment here today that's supported by staff and everybody that will do just that. If you have a house and you put a garden in your backyard, you will be able to sell your fruits and vegetables by right. That's a state law, and we're changing it. The difference is this would be a vacant lot without a house on it.
So the only difference is this is a vacant lot versus a house. So every house in the neighborhood could have a garden already with the current UDC amendments that the staff is recommending. So the only change is that this is a vacant lot and it doesn't have a house on it. So they're already recommending that every other house in the neighborhood can sell their fruits and vegetables. So why not the vacant lots? And why not put those lots to use as well? That's what we're saying. If every other house on the street can do it, why not the vacant lots? Why do we want a pile of trash in our communities in District 2, 3, 1, and 4, and 5, where we have tons of vacant lots and no development currently? I'm not saying put another use there that would be hard to demolish or but if it's every other house on the street can already do it with the amendments that are proposed, why not the vacant lots as well, is what this is saying.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, what we'll do then is I'll entertain a motion for approval of the UDC proposal by the staff, save the 3 amendments that have been made by, okay, we have a motion. 3 amendments were made by Councilman Gallagher, Villagran, and Ward. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the staff proposal on item 29. Please vote. With the exception of the 3 stated proposed amendments. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. Now we have a motion and a second. Oh, I didn't make any comments. I forgot to comment. I will very briefly. very briefly on the amendment proposed by Councilman Gallagher. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate his effort to respond to concerns that have been voiced by citizens and thank those who are here today. I think his amendment creates middle ground between some of the various submitted amendments while maintaining the definition so that we can treat all the ambulatory surgical centers consistently, but also provides that extra level of review by the public and the City Council through the rezoning process, which of course allows for dialogue between us, the neighborhood and businesses, so that we can specifically address any concerns like traffic noise, hours of operation, and so forth. And so therefore I'll be supporting the proposal by Councilman Gallagher, and again appreciate his hard work in trying to strike the right balance in relation to the concerns that have been voiced by our citizens. So we have a motion and a second for the amendment as stated by the clerk from District 10. Okay, is everyone understanding? The Gallagher amendment. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the Quarry amendment that Councilwoman Viagran proposed. We have a motion and a second for approval. Please vote. The Quarry amendment by Councilwoman Viagran. Motion carries. And finally, we have a motion and a second for Councilman Warwick's amendment regarding urban farming. Please vote. Yes, there you go. Okay, that motion failed. Councilman, we can take that up again. Okay, that concludes our agenda for this evening and our City Council meetings for 2015. Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you. Thank you.